Hello and welcome to Inclusion for All Radio, where we have proper conversations for equity, access and opportunity. And here we unpack the barriers that keep millions of Nigerians from full financial and economic inclusion. And what we do is to spotlight the challenges that they face, discuss and explore solutions and innovation, as well as policy shifts that can break those barriers. On today's show, I am your host, Uche Enyioha, Stakeholder and Inclusion for All Manager at EFINA. And today we are talking about one of the most pressing challenges for Nigeria's poor, rural and informal communities, and that is access to credit. And of course, the numbers speak for themselves. EFINA's 2023 Access to Financial Services Survey shows that only 10% of low-income adults have access to formal credit, and 77% have never borrowed from a formal financial institution. In rural areas, of course, there's even a greater challenge in terms of access, in terms of infrastructure. And so we have only 2.7% of adults having borrowed from a formal financial institution, compared to about 8.3% in urban areas. And yet we have millions of people consistently saving and trying to repay loans in informal groups and village saving loans and associations. And there's a behavior that can be the foundation for a more inclusive credit system. And so the conversation we'll be having today would be around how we can bridge this gap. We will be identifying what's changing, what's missing, and what bold moves we can make to shift the needle for good. And that's the conversation we're about to have with my guest today, who is Mr. Michael Ogbaa. He is the CEO of Sytiamo Technology Limited, a company driving innovation in credit access for underserved populations. Michael, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to all the discussions we'll be having today.
Absolutely. So maybe just by way of a icebreaker question, if you think about the first time you ever accessed credit, can you share with us what that was for and how easy or difficult it was to get?
It was really difficult. I don't think I was able to access any credit until I started my banking career. Because before then, the question they would have asked, do you have collateral? What do you bring so that if our money doesn't come back, we'll be able to get it? So at that point, I didn't have anything. So there was no way I could have accessed anything. So yes, I didn't get access to credit until very late in my life. And it only happened when I had started my banking career.
Interesting. And maybe, riding on that, one of the questions that many people will ask is, why credit? Why do we need to go the way of credit to achieve our goals? And if you look at the numbers from the EFINA 2023 survey, only about 1% of the Nigerian adult population who had set certain goals for themselves actually reported using formal credit to meet their goals. The numbers also say that there's a high percentage of the adult population are not borrowing because they feel they don't need it. They don't want to be indebted. And so the question is, why credit? Why does credit have to be a key discussion when we're talking about financial inclusion?
Yes, because financial inclusion, like you rightly mentioned, I run a micro-lending institution. So when you want to open an account for an average Nigerian adult, the question usually is, what's in it for me? Why do you want to include me? Are you including me to get my data? Are you including me to give me an ATM card that I don't need? Are you including me for your own benefit? So usually we meet this thing. There was a time that we intentionally carried out a survey in Sytiamo because at that time we're dealing with 90% cash to all these micro borrowers, market women, and what have you. We discovered to our shock that they were adult Nigerian market women that did not want to have a bank account. And we wondered why. And that is the answer to the question you've asked me. They said, no, we don't want any bank account because they don't help us in any way. If they open this account, they will force an ATM down our throat, charge us 2,000, and every year they will charge us maintenance for something we don't need. If you want them to give you money for your business just as a loan, they will never give you. So why do you want to include me? I don't want to be included. It was a shocking revelation, but it also helped us because we do micro lending. So opening account with us or one way or the other, working with us was very easy because we gave them the money they needed to help their business. So that is why lending or borrowing or access to finance is a very integral part of financial inclusion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, the data shows us that as much as these people, and you've mentioned some of, the women you have engaged who, are involved in their small trading, but the data shows us that a large percentage of that segment, about 31 or so percent, are actually borrowing, but from informal sources rather than formal institutions. Right. So the question I'm asking is, how is the formal credit space evolving to be able to properly integrate that segment, into the formal lending space? Would you say the challenge is in the types of products we have? Is it in the types of access channels that are available? Is it perhaps the trust issue where the consumer protection or consumer engagement mechanisms are not as responsive and expansive enough, to engender that trust that would encourage participation?
It's a combination of everything you've mentioned and much more. I'll tell you a story. When we started as Sytiamo, this question you asked now was part of what we wanted to know. And we were shocked to discover at that time the number one formal kind of product that was making wave in all the markets we visited was a product by the then Diamond Bank, which is defunct now, which has been taken over by Access Bank. And they call it Diamond Beta. That beta product was Diamond Bank intentionally take banking to these market women at where they were. So whether they want to save 20,000, 2,000, 1,000 for that day, there was a Diamond Bank staff that were there in their shop to give them that, to collect that money from them. And whenever they wanted to borrow, as it were, they were somebody, or whenever they wanted to take money out, instead of going to the bank, those Diamond Bank beta agents came to their shop to make the money available. And no product was very close to what Diamond had then. So yes, there is a bit of trust, but more importantly, convenience was what sold the most. These people, they want somebody that hears their language and understands them at their own level. That is what is very important to them. So it's a combination of everything you have said, but more importantly, the most important part is hearing them, understanding their language, and doing what makes them happy. Today, Sytiamo Technology Limited, we borrowed that model from the defunct Diamond Bank. So we go to our customers where they are. They don't come to us. So we have agent field officers that their job is to meet these customers where they are. When we lend money to them, we are no longer doing cash. So we do transfer to the account. Our agent field officer will be there to confirm that they have received the money. For some, we even have POS to make it easy for them to withdraw this money. But again, thankfully, POS is everywhere in Nigeria. So withdrawing the money has become way, way better at their disposal. So the idea is the formal lending and the formal segment still do not understand the chemistry, the language, and the needs of these people. Like you said, at the informal element, they borrow and they pay back. It's just that we need the formal sector need to understand them and meet them at the point of their needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And riding on that, considering the infrastructure gaps, considering of course, the resources, the scarcity of resources, as it were, considering the hard to reach nature of some of these locations, what would you say can be some practical steps that the formal lending institutions can action, to bring their services closer to this segment?
It's a whole lot. Again, the formal sector, they only do business that are profitable to them. Taking cash to someone in rural area, and I'll use Bonny Island as an example. When CBN insisted that POS operators should not charge more than 100 naira for every transaction, those in Bonny Island were laughing at them, because for you to bring cash to Bonny Island, the person withdrawing the cash cannot pay anything less than 1,000 or 1,400 naira for whatever transaction they are going to do, because they will have to take that cash through the sea, enter a boat with all the insecurity and what have you. But the point I'm making is that meeting rural dwellers at the point of their needs will require not just infrastructure, but there is a cost element to it. So my answer to you is that it is not something that the private sector themselves can start and end. It's a collaboration between the government, between the private sector, and the villagers themselves. So I don't think there is any local government or any community where you do not have a hospital, for instance, or a school, for instance, or a post office when it used to exist. So we can ride on existing infrastructure to bring this financial inclusion at the doorsteps of these rural dwellers. Anything other than that will be very expensive for the private sector to carry and shoulder themselves. So there must be a touch point that will bring together the government, the community, the private sector. That is the only way that can be both profitable and practical for all the parties involved.
Thank you so much. Very important point made there, the need for collaboration and, whole of sector partnership to bring financial inclusion closer to the segments that we care about. Moving on from that layer of the conversation to another, which is the KYC conversation. If you think about a petty trader, let's say in Zaria, or a vulcanizer in Aba today, what do you think would be the chances of their getting a loan from a formal financial institution where the KYC requirements and documentation still remains a challenge?
Yeah, the KYC is not a challenge to the extent that the government has done a whole lot with regards to identifying citizens. So today, I understand that we have about 100 million or slightly above that have NIN number. We also have quite a number of Nigerians that are eligible to vote. So you have adult Nigerians, and according to INEC, you have over 90 million Nigerians that have accessed their voters card, as it were. So between BVN, the biometric verification number that banks have been issuing, and the NIN and the voters card, these are the touch points that we can ride on to do KYC. So if that vulcanizer in Aba or the person you mentioned in Zamfara have any of these three, KYC should be easy. There is a database at INEC. There is another one in all the banks via BVN. I think it's managed by NIPS. And there is another one, which is the NIN, which is managed by the federal government. Between these three, we can do KYC of anybody, except the person does not have voter's card, the person has not done their NIN, or does not have BVN. That is where it becomes a bit difficult. And getting these three is not as difficult because, again, INEC have started the continuous registration for voters. And I also believe that NIN is an ongoing issue. A lot of people, before you can access any of the things that government is providing, you must have it. And BVN, the banks are also scaling up on bringing people the financial inclusion. So that is the easiest and best way to do KYC for these customers. If they should issue or provide any of these three, we should use it as a means of identifying them and granting them access to finance.
Absolutely. But just on that point, with the current KYC framework, the highest that a NIN holder, a BVN enrollee would be a tier 2 account. If you consider some of the MSMEs, especially up north, who drive a lot of transactions, high volumes of transactions, but don't have, let's say, a valid address verification document, for instance, or don't have their businesses registered with the CAC, transitioning to a tier 3 account becomes more difficult. And so if they can't move their transactions, high volume of transactions with the bank accounts, there's little incentive to actually own a bank account. What would be your thoughts on that, sir?
Yes, so when your business has scaled up, the onus is on you to find a way to solve your problem by yourself. So what I say to people is this: the banks are there to make business, right? Now, if Malam Adamu is doing trade, so Madam Adamu is the highest seller of groundnut and rice and soya beans in somewhere in Narakamuda or wherever, one village like that. The moment he starts doing millions of transactions or transactions in millions of naira, what I expect him to do is this: start collaborating. There is a filling station down the road that people come there to buy fuel. Can you collaborate with them, either to take their cash or to give them cash? There are market women around that area that will require cash to do their. Can you collaborate with them? It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal bank that will be coming to take your cash or give you cash to do all that. The people bringing the goods to you, are they paying you cash, or are you collecting transfers or what have you? So you need to decouple and see, how can I, even before registering and getting to tier 3 or tier 1, as the case may be, what else can I do in the immediate to solve my integration or inclusion problem? That is where these other stakeholders come in. There are off-takers of cash, there are users of cash. So collaborate with them to still do what you need to do, how be it without going through a formal bank. At Sytiamo Technology Limited, these are things that we are innovating and seeing how do we be that hub that will solve this problem. Usually weekends and what do you call them, Pepsi or Coca-Cola, if you want to come and take their product, they say, give us evidence of the payment you've made to a bank. Obviously, you know that banks don't open on weekend. So if you come to an agent field officer of Sytiamo Technology Limited and give that person whatever it is, 1.2 million, and the person collects that cash, he can issue a transfer for you that you can show to Coca-Cola or Pepsi that you have actually transferred money into the account. Then we also have users of this cash. They can be POS agents. So there is a lot going on at that bottom of the economic pyramid. It only requires you to take time to understand what is going on there, and you will find solutions that will bypass the formal banks, as it were.
Absolutely. A lot of innovation required at that level. And of course, a lot of financial literacy for that segment.
Yes.
My last question, for want of time, would be if you had to pick one bold policy move or innovation that could, radically shift credit access for the underserved, what would that be?
Okay, I'll tell you a story. I used to be the head of e-business, electronic business in Access Bank a couple of years ago. There was this innovation by the federal government through the Central Bank of Nigeria, what later became trader money and market money. A lot of us know about market money because Oshibajo, the former vice president, used to go to markets and give them 10,000 and they will pay back, and most of them did not pay back. Unknown to so many, there was another cash disbursement by CBN that was called trader money. That one was not 10,000. I think it was between 150,000 to maybe 400,000, as the case may be. Unlike market money that did not come back, trader money had over 90% repayment record. You know why? CBN told us that if they fail to pay back, send us their details, send us their BVN, we'll yank them off the financial system. They will not be participants in the financial system. And it worked. It was 100% working. So the guy takes money and thinks that he's not going to pay. He goes to his bank and to check his account, they say, you don't have any bank account with us. What happened? This is my account number. No. Are you owing federal government? Did you take trader money and you did not pay? Yes. Okay. Go and pay. And they were calling us to say, oh, please, I want to pay back that money I borrowed. So what's that policy I'm talking about? CBN can make people to, Nigerians have bad behavior when it comes to borrowing and repaying their loans. I think it was Credit Card the other day that was coming up with something that says if you are owing any bank, you will not be able to renew your driver's license, your international passport, and basic things, including voter's card. Those are the extreme policies I personally would want to see, because the carrot and the stick are the only way Nigerians can behave themselves. So we have to make it difficult for people to be defaulters. When you borrow with the intention of paying back. So let's make it difficult for them to have that bad behavior. You borrow from one person, you borrow from another place, you don't want to pay back. Let's force them to pay back by taking them out of this financial system. We have one BVN that will link them to all the other banks. So let's use that. CBN can be the driver for this, and make sure that when you borrow, if you have evidence of bad default or you don't want to pay your loan, will make life difficult for you. You become a KE. You go to the stern age, will yank you off the financial system. I think that will work. That will be one policy I want to see happen in my lifetime.
Interesting. I mean, that just highlights the need again for more work around credit literacy, so that people are able to borrow healthily. I mean, it's a conversation around financial health and financial capability and how people really interact with financial products and services. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing these insights. Again, it's clear that to bridge Nigeria's credit gap, it's not just the conversation around how we want to lend money or how we put money in the hands of people, but it's about thinking how the system can reflect the lived experiences and realities of the people that we care about.
Yes.
And to our listeners, of course, the conversation does not end here. We will keep working with you to ensure that the financial system works for everyone and everyone everywhere. You can listen to this episode again on all Inclusion for All and EFINA social media channels. My name again is Uche Enyioha, and this has been Inclusion for All Radio. We'll see you next time, and thank you.